Welcome to the meta. This is episode, I don't even know what number, season 46 to 47. I don't actually track the episodes here. Anyway, if this is your first time here, welcome. If it's your second or more time here, welcome back. What is the show? We look at the state of the competitive GAC meta once a season. In between the two seasons, basically looking back at what happened, looking ahead of what's coming forward, what's coming in the future, what's going to be going forward, sort of what's going on meta-wise, like what's popular, what's getting stronger, what's weaker, what are the datacrons doing, etc., etc. By the way, my version of competitive in terms of what data I analyze and where my perspective lies is in people either in the top of Kyber 1 or who want to be as high as they can go. Obviously, it's very different depending on what size your roster is, so it could be players of all levels. For example, I'll start the video now in the background YouTube video. Great guy, still plays, very smart, excellent approach to roster development. Yeah, check him out if he's a, actually I don't know his GP to be honest. I think he's in Kyber 3, so I guess he's probably around like 9 or 10 million maybe? I don't recall off the top of my head. Anyway, really nice guy, very smart, lots of interesting perspectives on stuff. So, who am I? I am not at 10 million, I'm more at like 13 million size. I'm in the top, 100 somewhere usually, depending on what's going on, my available time. Right now, in between seasons, I'm 30 something. But really more importantly, I watch a huge amount of GAC fights. So I have a pretty good grasp on what is the meta. I look at a lot of GAC data from GG Insight, swgh.gg Insight, some data I have access to, a few little tools I've built, etc., etc. And so that's where the basis of my opinion is coming from. By the way, a big part of it too is because of the community that is out there and enjoys GAC as well. Sort of like submit your own counter portal we have on grandarenascience.com. I think this last season we got well over 100 counters submitted there. Not all were accepted, some are duplicate or some don't have datacron details or something like that, but pretty awesome the amount that people are contributing themselves. It makes my job a lot easier, or I'm able to see content creators or just videos from individuals that I wouldn't normally see. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Thank you is what I'm saying. So how are we going to format this? 4 separate areas really. 3v3 and the current datacron sets, 5v5 and the current datacron sets, ships, and then an overall sort of like where the game meta is and how it relates to competitive PvP. So there's a bunch of text here. These are sort of my notes to myself. If you wish to read it, you can pause or ping me on Discord and I'll send you all the text if you want. So what's going to happen in this upcoming 3v3 season with set 11 and set 12 together? I think in general, I'm a 3v3 enjoyer because of the general wider variety of, you use more characters, obviously more teams. So there's a lot more, it's not just all, I guess in regular 5v5 you have 8 GLs and then, 14 other teams. And of those 14 other teams, there's Riva and Starkiller and Malgus and stuff. So you're always going to use those most of the time. So that really, you have like approximately 10 non-GL teams to use in 5v5. Whereas in 3v3, you have, I think it's 15 teams altogether on offense and 15 on defense. Not counting ships, of course. So really only half of them are like GL and equivalents. So I find that it makes it a little more interesting. 30 teams overall. So what does that mean for more interesting than next season? It's mostly with the impact of set 12. Because set 12 is really an offense, I don't want to say only, but yeah, sort of an offense only. I'm going to contradict myself very shortly. Offense only Datacron set. Like Afra, for instance, terrible on defense, especially with this set. Really good on offense, both in 3s and 5s. Okay, I'm completely contradicting myself. It does take some teams that didn't have a Datacron prior to this set and make them potentially good on defense. Like, you'll definitely see Tuscans on defense. They had like decent stats from set 11, but really with their Datacron in set 12, I think especially in week 1 they'll be on defense. As soon as week 1 is over, not really. Like the defensive stats for them are horrible on set 12 and they'll die to a bunch of stuff. But still can surprise some people if they're not ready for it. Or, when put with a bunch of other teams that take the same counters that are used against them, then yes, could be good. I think the only, and Jawas also, for those few people who have Javas at a level that they can use them with Datacrons. I think Javas with their level 6 mostly. Maybe Java Scavengers level 9 if you got lucky enough for that. But with the Java level 6, they'll be annoying in 3v3. I don't think really devastating. More so in 5v5, just when there's so many more potential thermal detonators. But in 3v3, they'll be interesting, but not crazy. So what matchups are really changing then? If we put aside the new things, what matchups are changing in this 3v3 season compared to the last 3v3 season? So Leia, not really changing. That's still going to be SLKR, Malicos, and KRU. And then you could Riva cleanup or maybe JML cleanup or something like that. Mirrors, people are definitely going to keep their Leia on offense a bit, but I think especially in 3v3, Leia is better on defense because the SLKR, KRU, Malicos is still, I think I put the stats in here somewhere. It's the same as the Malicos one, I think. It's like 75% win rate, so it can definitely still be messed up, especially if the opponent or your Malicos doesn't have all the Omicrons. 3 is a lot. Maybe you don't have a good Datacron, defense stacking level 6, etc. There's some certainly risks there. Still, it's quite good. If you do have all of those things, your win rate's much higher than 75. I would say it's closer to like 85, 90. So what else is set 12? Yeah, see, here's the thing. This is where it's a little like rock, paper Datacron. Java has a really good Datacron. Java and Bush together have a great Datacron. But like the vast majority of it is completely countered by JMK, which is the main counter to Java before anyway. And with JMK and Scoundrel no revive, you kill Kyrgyzstan and problem solved. Like, it might take a little bit longer, but it's still going to be an easy kill for JMK. So nothing really changes that much there. I mean, both are better, but they counter each other with this set already. So I think I'll still put Java on defense. Just his DC set definitely makes him like more dangerous, but I'd say more dangerous to off-meta teams rather than GLs or off-tier teams. I don't like the word off-meta. Oftentimes the non-GL teams are the meta, so off-meta doesn't really make any sense. Anyway, non-GL side, as I mentioned, a little bit more interesting. Yeah, Tuscans, Jawas. Afra is going to be good, but not on defense. Don't put your Afra on defense. Hound and Chewie will just kill it. Tons of good Rebel teams on defense and offense, but that's the same as in last season. I think the Scoundrels are going to be where it's interesting. What do you do with your Scoundrels? Some interesting potential stuff with L3. With her level 9, I mean. Like Dash, Vandor, and L3. Yes, you give up stats, obviously, if you don't use set 11. But if you have the no revive or basic reset cooldowns, I think is great. And L3's level 9, and she's stacked with health. She counters all the time, and you have Vandor there to revive her. That's very interesting. I really think there's some potential there. And a few other small things, ability block is great for scoundrels. Blind, there's some fun stuff. I'm also curious with Kara Dune. I don't think there's really a good place for her in 5 or in 3s. I think it's going to be 5s, TW in 5s. L3, I just talked about that, yeah. And TW, of course. I think TW, in terms of meta changes with this set, is probably a bit more interesting. I'm not at all involved in the planning of TW. I don't really have time for that, and I find the TW game mode personally, in the current stage, I like the fighting part, but not the planning and the scheduling, and what a mess. Conceptually, it's nice. In practice, it could be improved a lot. But this is not a rant about TW. But anyway, I do think definitely for this month, this season, I guess, of these Datacron, set 12 is going to be impactful in TW. Mostly with, how does Jabba and Leia play together? Where does Afra go? What does Lord Vader do? Well, some interesting questions there. Jawa's also, I don't know how many guilds are going to put walls of Jawas, but that's not a super easy team, I don't think. We'll see. Anyway, what does it mean for 5v5? So yeah, I just talked about 5v5 is basically with TW. Okay, I've repeated all of this already. Yeah, and then besides the ones I just mentioned, like Tuskens in 5v5, well, Tuskens in TW, I don't really see them hitting up that much. They'll still do the same counters they already do, just a little bit better. I mean, they're a great team, but since it's so fragile, I don't know how much you'll see them on defense. Anyway, Scoundrel no revive is going to be everywhere. That's definitely a fantastic skill, or ability rather, at level 6, and tons of Scoundrels out there. So ships are still super interesting. I'm leaving in everything I had from last month. I will cover to get a bit again, just to re-summarize it. But I think ships are the most interesting part of the overall meta in all competitive game modes right now. And by that, I mean there's the most variables, and things are less likely to be played the same from player to player. I mean, like in terms of combat variables, not so much, because the only real variable in ships is relic level of the pilots. So that's a pretty small thing to be able to manipulate if you want to control aspects of the fight. But in terms of how many different ways there are to choose what fleet you want for offense and defense, and exactly how you want to tweak stuff, that is interesting. And in my mind, that it all revolves. So now this is everything below here is what I had from last month, and it basically revolves around Leviathan. I did bring up some data I wanted to go over here just to show you what I mean, in addition to talking. Okay, I'll pause the video. Let's go look at some Leviathan stats. So no cleanups included in this data on GG. I'm looking Leviathan standard with Sith Fighter starting. I don't sort for reinforcements, just Sith Fighter. If you're using the Chimera counter with Sith Fighter, you have, like, broadly speaking, 70-75% chance to win. Okay? Could be higher or lower, but roughly that is what we're looking at. Mirrors are like 90, more like 95 if you know how to play them, even if you go second. So if you don't use mirrors, the only two other things I'm curious about really is what happens if you have Negotiator with Marauder, and then Profundity, right? So Negotiator, Marauder, depending on lineups, if there's 2 or 3 on Leviathan side, how many do you have? You have between, like, the more reinforcements the Sith fleet has, Leviathan fleet has, the worse Negotiator is on winning. But if they only have, like, 2 reinforcements, for instance, you have like 40-50% chance of win in certain lineups. So not great, but an option, and almost certainly, if you know how to play the counter, you'll almost certainly kill 1 or 2 ships. So that's fantastic. But Chimera is still better. So let's look then if we have Profundity versus this Chimera lineup. Okay, again, 2 reinforcements we can see on Leviathan side. Terrible. Always have 3 reinforcements. You must have 3. 2 is really bad. But look, 3 reinforcements. For some weird ass reason, the scimitar is coming out first. Somebody doesn't know how to set their reinforcement or play there. And profundity wins 80% of the time. If you look at everything on average overall, and you exclude the really dumb stuff, profundity still has like 60, 65%, 10, 15% chance less than Chimera to beat Leviathan. It's really good. Really, really good. So you'd sort them by Chimera, profundity, Leviathan in terms of best chance of one shot. For Sith fighter starting. Now let's look at Sith dagger. TIE dagger, I guess. TIE dagger starting. Chimera drops way down. You're looking at probably 50%, roughly a few variables, but around 50%. Leviathan mirror doesn't change. And then if we want to look at Negotiator again, with Marauder, of course, what does Negotiator with Marauder do? Whoa, that plummets also. Not a ton. I wouldn't say it plummets. It goes down a bit. You're looking, it goes up a bit. It goes up a bit. You're looking at probably around 55%. I know if you look at these numbers here, they don't necessarily say 55. Like this one is 50, this is 43, this is 44, this is 48. But if you go in and look at all of the, or not all, but some of the examples and the relic levels that people have on their pilots, you're looking, it's a little bit better with the dagger starting than with the Sith fighter starting with Negotiator Marauder. Again, you have to know how to play it, but your chance of winning goes up about 5 to 10%. Okay, for dagger starting. Now, dagger starting, what happens with profundity if you're using profundity? Here is where it gets really interesting. Dagger starting is terrible. This is the important one we're looking at here. Profundity with only 2 reinforcements. This is not a few examples, this is 44 examples. Profundity with only 2 reinforcements, or with 0 reinforcements, 75% win rate. Yep. Don't start dagger if your opponent has profundity. Now, they may not think to use it, in which case, great for you. But profundity is fantastic against Leviathan with dagger starting. I wouldn't start dagger personally. Unless you want your opponent to use profundity, which makes your executor triple attacker a little bit more difficult if you have that on defense. Again, so there's an option. However, executor triple attacker can fall to Chimera pretty reliably as well. Not as reliable as profundity, but they can do that too. Something to think about. The last option for Leviathan here is Mark 6 starting. Mark 6 starting doesn't really stop Chimera. Mirrors are 100% instead of like 90. Profundity is still 80% with full, or even more with less. Negotiator goes up to 60, 70, 80%, 65%. Don't start Mark 6. Worst choice. Maybe you'll throw some bad opponents off or something. But that's the worst of all the 3 starting. So don't do that. Anyway, that's the sort of basis of why I think ships are interesting. Because depending on what you put with your Leviathan, or you could even keep your Leviathan for offense, then you have a lot of other options. Negotiator, Marauder is good, very good on defense. Not quite at the profundity executor level, but good. I've seen profundity's time out against it. Poor play, like should have been a win. I have seen it destroy executor teams. Only the triple attacker version, not the Houndstooth version. Executor being the attacking team. Again, I think bad play could have been better because Executor can beat it quite reliably, but it's still a pretty good team on defense. So that's an option for a third team on defense, depending on assuming you're putting like finalizer, you're putting Leviathan and Executor triple attacker and Negotiator. It's a tricky-ish puzzle for your opponent to solve. Very solvable, but definitely some RNG in there, and you have to be good on offense as well. and you have to without negotiator, because that's a great offensive team. I would say it's a better offensive team than defense, because it can technically kill all of the meta fleets, just not 100% in all of them. Very interesting. So again, here's a bunch of interesting text. I summarized a lot of it. Let me continue the video if it still plays. I summarized a lot of it, but I mean, read it if you'd like to. I'll scroll through sort of slowly. La 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 la. Okay. So where are we with the game state? My perspective is sort of that of relaxed waiting, you could say. Like, what's next? What's coming next? The new raid, pretty easy. I mean, obviously easier now than it probably will be, assuming they're going to change C-3PO so he can't escape and be used over and over again. But even just putting aside what actually characters you have to relic up to do the higher tiers, the relic 8 tiers, like mechanically the raid is very easy. Most players can put it on auto and you get like 70-80% of the best score you can get, you know. Auto will get you 2.1, 2.3 million versus 2.7 if you played super carefully and got all your modding correct and stuff like that. So in that regards, it's pretty easy. I think the majority of players are not trying for high boxes or anything like that, or the max that their guild could do, which is sort of a shame because the rewards from the raid system in general are fantastic. I mean, more average overall rewards than the previous raid. I mean, obviously, previous raid you do 2 in 1 week, now you do one in 1 week, and the rewards were doubled because you do 1 instead of 2. But even putting that concept aside, the rewards are a bit or more compared to the amount of time and roster development that most people have to do. So overall, great. It's a shame the raid isn't more like fun or engaging, I think, but no question that it's a net positive for most people compared to the previous raid. Yeah, Rise of the Empire, the TB is easier every month, which makes sense. Like you have most people every month have more characters to use, so easier. And in general, let's do your operations and then do the few battles that you want to do. You know, the ones for currency or if you're pushing for a certain star or something like that. Conquest every set of 3, because they're more or less the same in each set of 3. Little few changes, but more or less the same. That's easier every time. I mean, yeah, I don't mind Conquest at all. Now that they introduced simming, yeah, it's sort of fun. You know, the week before Conquest, I'll usually go in and I'll make the teams that I know are part of the quests or the feats or accomplishments, whatever they call them. I'll make the teams I know I'll need in my squads tab, and then during Conquest, and then plus a bunch of like the teams that I know will kill everything. And then when it starts, I just go click the teams, do each one 4 or 5 times, whatever, depending on what zone I'm in, I'm calling them datacrons in Conquest, what discs I have in Conquest. Very easy. I mean, the only challenging one is the beginning of this set where the bosses were really hard, but still you could beat it with GLs if you give it a little bit of effort. Or a lot of effort. I mean, the bosses were annoying. I beat, I think, the first 2 zones when they were hard, but it was really like a Ray situation. Made it quite reasonable. Anyway, TW I find still sort of unengaging. Again, I like the fighting part. I like, the sort of camaraderie and rivalry aspect of it. I don't really engage in trash talk or anything like that. That's not really my thing. But like I know it's cool for a lot of people. So I'm all for that. But just the way that the mode is designed, I don't really enjoy that much. There's not much for me to do as a player, Like I said, I don't really do any of the planning aspect of it. I don't have time or desire, frankly, given the relative rewards. But the playing part is pretty easy. Do your, 8, 9, 10, whatever battles, depending on if you're cleaning up for somebody or not or whatever. And then that's it. You're done. So GAC is still where I'm getting most of my enjoyment. That's where I use my characters. I can choose how I want to use them. I can prepare and mod and use datacrons that I've acquired in the way that I wish. To me, I find that really enjoyable. I like the combat aspect, the fighting aspect, playing another player. Depending on how much effort you want to put in, you can plan a lot or plan a little. Like, that's great. I really like that quite a bit. Man, he got destroyed by Java. Hope if that's good. Video in the background for people listening on the podcast. So I really enjoy GAC, but moving on to the next section here. GAC is still a bit of a grind. Now, I don't really mean that in a negative way exactly, but there's very little motivation besides the crystal rewards or, the sense of pride and accomplishment, I guess. And for me, in GAC, I've done everything essentially except be number one. And why would I want to be number one? There's not even a title. If there was a title, I would fight for number one. But without a title, I've been number two. I've fought the number one player at the time and in the top 8 bracket a few times and all of that. And the fights are certainly interesting, But the amount of time it takes to prepare and to compete at that level, for me at least personally, it's not really worth it. It's much easier. Like this last season for me was a great example. I got beaten once in the first week, and then I screwed around and I lost all 3 of my matches. But then I was in 400 or some crazy number for me again for my roster size, and then I won the next 6 matches. I don't want to say without trying, because of course I played every fight and I did my regular stuff, but none of them were close. I don't think I got cleared the entire last 6 matches. And not because I set any special defense or putting all my GLs on defense, just I'm a regular play style. But for my roster size at least, the competitive matches are in the top 50, top 30. I mean, anywhere in the top 50. I can be competitive in the top. I can fight Aesop and have a competitive roster with him. Obviously, his has some advantages, mine has some advantages, but he's not going to make mistakes. Put up a very creative defense that takes me a lot of time and brain juice. Brain power. I like brain juice to try and solve for. I'm not even going to be number one if I beat him, because I have to get a lot of points to be number one. Anyway, so me, it's not personally. I'd love to fight Aesop, but to get all the way up there and then my reward is just 600 crystals. I'll happily hang out in the 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, 50s, and get the same amount of crystals in half the amount of time. And fight relatively similar rosters, in the top 100. Yeah, let's say the top 50. The rosters are more or less the same as mine. I mean, maybe a couple of character differences here and there. Certainly I have quite a bit different modding than most players, but it's still neither one of us has a roster advantage by and large. Not one of the guys I've been doing a lot of stuff with content-wise, and we get along pretty well, is Sanjita. Calvin and many other players that are hitting up in the top of Kyber, but seeing them play in the top of, or in Kyber, or the top 100 of Kyber, they are really hitting up. They're doing they're sweaty, you can say. They're working very hard to get their wins, which is awesome. I think that's a big accomplishment, taking a roster with gaps here and there that your opponents may not have and really managing to beat them. But at least for me, in my roster, I don't really have gaps like that. So mostly I win because I don't make mistakes, and my opponent loses because they make mistakes. Not that I'm taking advantage of the roster differential. For me, at least, that's how generally it works. Um, that was a long rant talking about myself and GAC. So, still the question is like, what next? Why am I building my roster for? What parts of my roster am I building? Because we're sort of in a fugue state. There's not a lot of movement now, like at the top at least, once you have a steady supply, a steady new income of Relic 8 materials, and you're just waiting for characters that are behind a paywall, but you're getting all the new Conquest characters, you have the GLs and everything. I'm not saying you wailed on Paz Vizsla or IG-12 or anything like that. My IG-12, well, my Paz Vizsla now I think is Relic because of the shipment stuff, so I did soft whale or something. I purchased his shards for crystals, just not his packs. Anyway, so while we're waiting for the next new character to come out to be able to be farmable and acquiring gear and stuff like that, for me the only thing that I really enjoy is GAC. That's like every week there's a few three new opponents, or I've fought most of them before already, but 3 opponents with new rosters, new strategy, new plan, everything. That's interesting and fun for me. But there's no real new game systems. Like even the new raid, once you figure it out, it's just doing it over and over again. You're not getting a new character, you're not getting some exclusive reward from that. So that's sort of what I'm waiting for. Now, on one hand, maybe it is a new advancement system because they're doing a lot of catch-ups. Like with the Lightspeed bundles, just bam, the Beskar Mando they just announced. Before they had the GLs, Ray and SLKR. That's amazing. Like that's fantastic to get new players. They had Star Killer, I think, a bit more expensive. So these catch-up Lightspeed bundles are awesome to get players up to speed, like to get to a level where they can compete with other players again, and participate in other parts of the content, like do the PvE content, do TB and Conquest and blah blah blah. But I think what many people stay in this game for is the active players, at least the competitive players. Of course, competitive players are staying for PvP, but like the ones who are really trying to achieve something. I guess some people play the game just to build out their characters, but I think most people want to do something with their characters. And GAC and TW, to a very, very lesser extent, Fleet Arena, no longer really character arena. But that's sort of what people are building their rosters for. And now, obviously I speak for a very, very small amount of people. There's not many people that are hanging out in the top 100 of GAC, so obviously my take is limited in terms of how it applies, but I think most people, even competitive players, they sort of have a range of Kyber. I'm guessing most players who are listening to this are from, well, no, I know most aren't, or most are, but not all certainly are from somewhere in Kyber. There's people here in Erodium and other stuff just because of roster size. Anyway, what's next? Like, what are we building our rosters for? Yes, it can be to climb the ranks in GAC, but it'd be nice if there's something besides just crystals and that number. Like, do you get something for being the top of Erodium or Kyber 2 or Kyber 1 or whatever the case may be? Or some other additional rewards for being highly ranked. I mean, right now you do get the currency, the GAC currency, which buys some decent stuff, but nothing exclusive, for instance. Anyway, I'm curious what they're bringing next to in the game. That's what I'm sort of leading up to. And I wonder what it is, whether it's an advancement system or a whole new advancement goal, I guess, like Relic 10 or character level 90 or something like that, or a new, maybe ship mods or mods 2.0, I don't know. Mods, I think, are in pretty good spot, just needs the better management system. Same with Datachron's, their management system's terrible. But what other game systems? Like, are we gonna? I would love a new PvP mode, or refreshing a PvP mode like Territory Wars. You know, we talked about this on the council a few days ago. Lots of interesting ideas there. I was thinking also, it's possible they do, like, next year could be the complete, because we're so balanced in terms of like competition, I guess, and they're bringing and making it so much easier for people to catch up to the end game in a bit, you know, to get more GLs and competitive characters or key, let's say, meta-defining units. Maybe they're considering, or it would be interesting if they were considering, I have no clue what they're considering. They haven't told us, and I doubt they will until maybe a tease in December, but probably after the holidays, you know. We generally have a road ahead, I think it is, in February. Hopefully we have some information before then. Probably some sort of tease a little bit here and there. But what if they just redo the whole PvP system, you know? And to me, PvP system is Arena, Fleet, GAC, and TW. So Arena is already more or less unimportant. You do get some rewards. I admit I do one battle a day to get my number one position, usually like 3 hours before, because like not many people worry about it. And I get a little bit more rewards, and I can use those Arena rewards for cash, or these days actually, with cash being available from the raid rewards, I use the Arena rewards for shards for the shard shop, which is great. What if they just redid everything? They took out Fleet, changed Fleet, Arena, GAC, TW, might even remove one of them altogether. You know, they could remove Arena, just move the rewards to someplace else. Really change it so there's not like this payout system of Fleet anymore. Because frankly, I don't think it's really good for anybody. There's not much benefit in that, seeing as how much they're pushing like the guild cohesion bit with raids, the raid system, TB, etc. You know, maybe they build out a much better territory war dynamic, erase altogether Fleet and Arena. Like, you don't need those at all. Maybe you do one battle a day, but you can do it anytime you want. You just have to win the battle. I don't know. Or maybe you take away that requirement altogether. Yeah, but maybe they could redo entirely the whole PvP dynamic, like system, like sort of like how they redid the raid system, you know? All of them feed into the same reward category. The dynamic in terms of when you do it and how often you do it, that's all changed. They removed a bad one, you know? Challenge Rancor is gone altogether. So they could easily remove dynamics or pieces of the dynamic they don't like. Anyway, I'm very curious what they do. And maybe it's none of this. Maybe it's not PvP. Maybe it's not a new advancement system. Maybe it's we just get another raid and that's what happens next year. That would sort of be a shame, because PvP really is a bit languishing now in the game. There hasn't really been any touch-ups in quite some time. The squish change was good. Like that's overall net positive crystals for the majority of players. I have no complaint. That's fantastic. Yeah, let's see what else I was talking about here in my notes. Yeah, sort of more background on why I think they're going to introduce a new game dynamic, either a new advancement mechanic or a new game mode, or totally redesign some game area, game systems. Because all the GLs sort of have their lifter with Darth Bane. The only one that doesn't really have a lifter is SLKR. But does he really need one? He has Hux. I don't know if you consider that a lifter, sort of. But it doesn't do that much, honestly. I mean, it's great in 5v5, but in 3v3 not really. And SLKR doesn't really need a lifter. It would be nice for him to have one, you know, like if you could do SLKR battles sort of how they hinted Darth Bane will remove the need for Watt, maybe SLKR you could find something to remove the need for Watt and Armorer. But that would be a super powerful character. Do you really want to give that to a GL already? I'm not so sure. Anyway, just more background for why I think they're introducing some new system. Yeah, that's about it. Now, what's wrapping it up? So, I like the game quite a bit right now. Oddly enough, I find it sort of relaxed, like with simming of Conquest. Oh, that's so amazing. I think in the time I've been in Conquest so far, I'm maybe 50 points away from the red box. And I only do 50 or 100 refreshes. And I think I've taken 3 days. I was just busy with other stuff, and I've simmed like all of my refreshes on Sims just for Datacron farming stuff. I'll still finish my get red box in the next probably 3 days or something like that. It's super easy. It's wonderful. I love it. And with the new raid being so low investment on time, I love that too. It just altogether, it's a nice amount of time. I wouldn't mind playing the game more. I wouldn't mind doing more GAC, for instance. But I can't. There's no way to do more competitive stuff. My competition in TW is the guild, I guess. Can I place my teams on defense faster? Whatever, it's not actually a competition. I'm just saying, for me, there's no competition in TW. Just follow orders, not actually make any decisions for myself. Besides being in the fight and not screwing up the battle. But that's something that I really enjoy, so that's fine. But yeah, it would be nice to have a way to actually choose if I wanted to do some more of the content. Like Arena, I can go in there, and if I wanted, I could do another fight in Arena. It gets me nothing. Not even a gold or something like that. But I could if I wanted. It'd be nice if there was a competitive way, where you could go fight and maybe you get a little bit more ranking or something like that. Or a very small award if you do, a certain amount, if you gain so much ranking in a week or in a day or something. Anyway, I think there's lots of options there that could increase played time for players, which is sort of what CG is looking for in many cases. And be more fun for players who want to do some competition. So that's about all I've got for this meta. 42 minutes. This is probably the shortest one I've ever done. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Love to hear what you think. If you have any ideas, feedback, thoughts, whatever, let me know in Discord, I guess, if you're listening on podcast. Or if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment or something like that, as you wish. Cheers. Good luck with your prep for season 47. And I'll talk to you guys soon in the Meta Moment podcast. Cheers.